Good morning. All right. And we're back in business. How's everybody this morning? Good? Awesome. Okay. So welcome to day 2 of Last Best Conference. I went home and reflected a little bit about what happened yesterday and thought a lot about the range of speakers that we had, from improvisational techniques for better communication that made me laugh and made us all laugh, to CEO stories that brought tears to my pregnant eyes. So it was pretty incredible range, and I'm really grateful to everybody who's coming on stage to connect so boldly with you as an audience. They've been an amazing group, and it's another amazing group today. I also reflected on you as an audience and was really grateful for your powerful presence yesterday. And then one guy in particular kept on going, "Yeah!" And I really love you. You rock. So I was curious if we could start the morning out really quickly with some powerful takeaways from you. If you had some words that really resonated with you, or some phrases that resonated with you, if you could shout them out and I'll repeat them back. I'm curious what some of the things were that stuck with you from yesterday, for those of you who are here. Ooh, upstream. Can you elaborate? Like, where was that from? Ooh, okay. Yes. Okay. What else? Collaboration. Great. Lots of that happening yesterday. Ooh, chocolate covered broccoli. I want to know about that. Can you elaborate?
Just what this one was talking about, and how entertainment is education. So you can have that in that corporate part there, that message you want in your props, but also
That's great. That's a good one, a really good one. Somebody else had one over here. Culture houses. Ooh, yeah, so cool. And collective and collaborative. Love that. What else? Who are you becoming by the content you consume? Yeah, ooh, really good one. Really powerful. Thank you for sharing those. I love all of those, and they're all so different. And I think that's kind of the beauty of all of these speakers. They're all so different, and we'll all have different takeaways from each of them. I wanted to give a quick thank you to our sponsors again, just because without them, we wouldn't be having this event. So thank you to our founding partners, Missoula Federal Credit Union and the University of Montana. Thank you to the maturation level sponsors. So the Ranch at Rock Creek is one of those, and they will be hosting the startup competition at 12 p.m. at the Public House today with Missoula Federal Credit Union. So make sure, if you have time, you can make it over there. And then also thank you to our premier media sponsor, the Missoulian. Also our creation level sponsors, the DoubleTree, First Interstate Bank, Missoula Economic Partnership, Blackfoot, and Missoula Community Access Television, who's donating a grant on behalf of us to film this. So really quickly, also one other housekeeping issue. Today, breakouts will end earlier than yesterday, so they'll end closer to 2 p.m. and we'll dismiss a little bit earlier as well. And then we ask that you get here before 2:30 p.m. because we will start promptly at 2 or 2:30. The Wilma has a show later today, so we're speeding things up and making sure that everyone's going to be here so you don't miss out. So quickly now, I want to move on to our first opening speaker. This speaker is a self-described big dude, and he's got a beard to match. His background is incredibly diverse, from being a sergeant in the Army National Guard to a narcotics agent busting bad guys. And then he's got this other side that he is, where he's served on the board of the Richmond AIGA, which is a really creative, artistic institution. He's an entrepreneur and now works for a pretty sweet creative agency in California. Please welcome Digital Director from Blind, Ben Burns.
What's up, guys? Good morning. Oh, no, we got to do that again. Good morning. There we go. Guys, I am just humbled to share this stage with some of the speakers that we've seen yesterday and the ones that we're about to see. Them sharing their pursuits of passion and the way that they're making lasting impact. You know, everything that LBCon is all about, it's just incredible. But the thing about pursuing passions is that typically it involves some really scary stuff, right? And how many of you guys have been scared in your life? Experienced fear? Should be everybody. That guy lied. And how many of you guys are trying to overcome or conquer this fear? Me too. Guys, I think we're all wasting our time. It's true. We spend so much time trying to overcome, crush fear. And it's almost pervasive in our society. Think about what we tell each other. Don't be scared. Don't worry. Don't stress. You know, all those feelings that you're feeling right now, don't do that. So, you know, I have been struggling with fear my entire life. And that may surprise you. I am 6'1", 275 pounds. I'm an ex-police officer, ex-military, and I wear a size 14 boot. I have been extensively trained in defensive tactics and marksmanship and surveillance. I've kicked in doors and wrestled with violent felons. And all this I did before I started one business that absolutely failed. And then another business that has led me to the life of my dreams. So you guys may be sitting there and thinking, this does not seem like the resume of a fearful person. But let me assure you, this journey has been terrifying. And it started early. I can remember the first time I really experienced true fear. It was a hot, sticky summer day in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The sun was blazing from the sky and it bounced off the pavement. It's just blinding. It's the perfect pool day. And that's where my two younger brothers and I were. We were splashing around in the shallow end when something amazing happened. The lifeguard went over and took the chain off of the high dive. We looked at each other and we were just like, oh, it's about to go down. So being the good big brother that I am, I went ahead and sent the two younger ones out first. You know, had to preserve the family bloodline just in case. So they scrambled up that thing and jumped off like it was jumping out of bed in the morning. Too easy. My turn. So I sauntered up and I grabbed the cold steel of the ladder. I took it rung by rung to the top. When I got there, I took a deep breath. I walked to the edge of the board. When I got here, I looked out on the horizon, and I was so high I could see the gentle curvature of the earth. I looked down, and I could see my brothers in the pool way down below, splashing around. I could barely make them out. And it was at that moment that I realized that there was no damn way I was jumping off of that board. No, it was terrifying. My heart beat out of my chest. My stomach sank, my knees were weak, and I fell flat onto the diving board. I wrapped my arms around that thing as it tried to fling me into the depths below. It was terrifying. I eventually made it down into the water, but it wasn't the quick way. No, it was the long, slow climb of shame down the back of the ladder. We can laugh at this story. It's totally a funny story. But I was marked that day with deep-seated fear. I was afraid of heights, who knew? And I was also afraid of failing in public, especially in front of people that I love. And, you know, for years after the diving board incident, I stayed in that frozen state. I was hidden, static. I stopped trying new things. I really stopped trying altogether. And I stopped being an adventurer and started being a peacemaker. It was tragic. And for years, I tried to become fearless. I knew people like this, people that seemed to just truck through life without experiencing fear, my brothers. And I'm not that person. So I'm not here today with a recipe of how to overcome your fears. But what I do want to share with you guys is just a simple formula that I've used to act fearlessly. And it's super simple. Arrive at points of courage as quickly as you can. Explore what you're feeling, and then take massive action. It seems very simple, but give me a chance. All right, I want you to think about the last time that you had a major life decision, something that kept you awake at night, something that really was going to change the course of your life. Can you remember the amount of negative emotion and anxiety and stress that you went through when, leading up to that decision point? What if we could make these big life decisions without feeling all that fear and anxiety? You see, I know this well. I've switched careers like 35 times, and in that time, I've made some pretty hefty decisions. And the one I want to talk about is, it happened about 4 years into my law enforcement career. See, I was a police officer for the city of Savannah, Georgia. And I started out as a patrol officer, but then I worked my way up to a narcotics agent. And this was the coolest spot ever. I got to wear plain clothes, grow a badass beard, and I spent my days working with the DEA, listening to wiretaps, and kicking in doors, snatching drug dealers off the street. It was great. But something was missing. You see, before I was a police officer, I was a graphic designer. And I missed that creative expression. And so, to kind of fill in that gap, I started freelancing on the side. I'd do $50 logos here and there, whenever I was working on a particularly boring wiretap or, after hours. And eventually, as passions do, design became an obsession. And I knew that I wanted to go full time. I knew that I wanted to just take control of my day and design full time. But I was so anxious about making the right decision that I just waited. And I waited for nearly a year. And so finally, I got so sick of waiting that I did something a little strange. I went ahead and designed some new stationery for my new business, and I typed up my resignation letter. I printed it out, I folded it up, and I put it in my pocket. Now, I told myself that I wasn't making a decision here, right? Because I don't know what the right decision is at this point. I was just getting rid of a roadblock. And so, a little while down the road, I found myself standing in front of my sergeant's door. And it felt right. I think I was about to do this. And all these fears started bubbling up. What was my sergeant going to say if I quit? What would my team members think about me abandoning them? What would my wife think? Because she didn't know. What if I fail? My knees were weak. My stomach was through the floor. My heart was pounding. And seemingly without logically processing anything or any logical thought whatsoever, I opened the door, I took the letter out of my pocket, and I set it on his desk. Now, this sergeant was a big, burly, intimidating dude. You probably know the type, being Montana. Iron sharpens iron kind of guy. And he unfolds the letter, and he looks at me. He says, "Are you sure?" No, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about it. I wasn't even sure where I was at that moment. That didn't matter. What mattered was that I made a decision right there that changed the course of my life in milliseconds. Without any logical thought, I trusted my gut. I call these moments points of courage. A point of courage is where you reach a fork in the road, where it forces you to turn right, to turn left, stay still, or resign yourself to moving backwards. And all the fear and anxiety that leads up to these points of courage, it's a waste of time. Do you know how long that letter lived in my pocket? 43 minutes. That's it. After a year of anguish and deliberating, I arrived at a point of courage 43 minutes after I typed that letter. The quicker we can arrive at points of courage, the simpler our lives become. But the question is, how do we know when we've arrived at points of courage? You know, if you're like me, full of fear and anxiety, you see them from a mile away. You're like, oh, here it comes. You know, I'm going to have to do something here. But sometimes they can sneak up on you. Sometimes you can arrive at a point of courage and then breeze right by without even knowing you were there. And I think that this has to do a lot with the way that we're built, the way that we're put together, literally our physiology. So I'm no scientist or neurologist or, I don't even know the ist to call this, but we went through some really cool training as police officers. And my favorite day was the day that we learned about how our bodies respond to moments of high stress. Now, at the time, I didn't know what high stress meant, but I quickly learned that high stress moments as a police officer were things like barreling 120 miles an hour down the freeway, or looking down the barrel of a gun pointed at you by a 14-year-old kid, or when your best friend cries out for help on the radio and then goes silent. Those were the kind of moments that they were talking about. And guys, we are amazing creatures. We go through, our bodies go through physiological changes when we're confronted with massive fear. For example, the blood moves away from organs like your stomach and places like your knees, and it goes into your muscle tissue. And what this feels like is your knees go weak, your stomach sinks, and really, this is kind of cool, all of your muscles tense up. And so even the small muscles around your hair follicles get tense, and that's where we get goosebumps. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Another thing happens is your heart beats out of your chest, and your breathing rate quickens. And this throws the oxygen balance in your bloodstream kind of out of whack. And so what that does is it can make your extremities tingle, and it also can make you feel lightheaded. But the coolest thing is what happens up here. Your prefrontal cortex kind of slows down, and that's the area of your brain that is responsible for logical thought, logical processing. And so if you've ever been in a car accident or had something happen to you where it felt like it was slow motion, you're not actually that cool. It's not the Matrix. You didn't slow time. What actually happened is you're perceiving things at the same rate, but your brain can't process them. And so it feels like time is slowing down. Isn't that awesome? As cool as this feeling sucks. Right? I mean, stomach sinking, heart beating out of your chest, it's not fun. And, I imagine back in the day when we were faced with like an angry bear or an opposing tribe, it was a good thing. But now it hasn't adapted to what we now perceive as threats. Things like leaving your job or getting married or getting divorced or, speaking in public. And so what this thing, it hasn't adapted, and I think that it can turn people away from points of courage. I think that the physical feeling of fear is enough to just, turn people away. And that's tragic, because if you don't allow yourself to explore your fears and understand what you're actually afraid of, there's no chance that you can overcome this or even act with it. So the next time your heart races and your knees feel weak, hit the pause button. Make sure you're not having a heart attack. And then, explore that feeling, because you may have arrived at a point of courage. But what happens if you've arrived at a point of courage and you're paralyzed? Frozen. Fear has a funny way of doing this. I know it well. So I was in basic training. And that's Army for boot camp. So we were standing at the position of attention, which is like this, for 45 minutes waiting to get into a classroom. And our drill sergeants were bored. Now, bored drill sergeants are nothing to trifle with. And to alleviate their boredom, what they did was they started playing what they affectionately call reindeer games. Ladies and gentlemen, Reindeer games are not fun to play. They're not. These packs of wide-brim hats would stalk our ranks, looking for loose uniform threads or missing patches. They'd be checking to see if we memorized certain things. And out of the corner of my eye, I was standing in position of attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the meanest drill sergeant, Drill Sergeant Bowles, start charging my way. And in that moment, I prayed to God. I hoped that the camouflage that I was wearing worked just a little bit better than the guy standing next to me. It didn't. So Drill Sergeant Bowles screeched to a halt inches from my face. And he says, "Private Burns, are you an American soldier?" I thought to myself, well, yeah, hey, I've been here for 2 weeks, right? "Yes, Drill Sergeant." He said, "Oh, so you're a soldier, huh? You must be a warrior. Let me hear your war cry." This is where my prefrontal cortex shut down. I didn't know what a war cry was. I saw Full Metal Jacket, and I still didn't know what a war cry was. I didn't know where I was at the moment. And so the sound, I knew I had to do something, but the sound that escaped my lips sounded like a stray cat drowning. And the look on Drill Sergeant Bowles' face was just utter disgust. So before he could react to anything, to what had just happened to him, I just hit the deck. I started doing push-ups right there. I knew it was coming, right? I just started doing push-ups. And so I was down there doing push-ups, and as I pushed, something kind of cool happened. It was like the gears in my head started turning again. They crept into life. And I started remembering, oh, yep, I'm at Fort Leonard Wood. Yep, this is Army Basic Training, and I just messed up. And I started to get mad at myself. I started to process things and get angry with myself. And I sat there, I was pushing, 600, 700 push-ups or something like that. And I got to a point where I was just so furious. And Drill Sergeant Bowles finally gave me another shot. And this time I stood up and I let loose a war cry that shook his boots. Not really, he was unimpressed. But the fact of the matter is that I felt great. So later on that night, I was trying to process what had just happened. And I thought to myself, what if it was me moving that got me unstuck? What if it was that physical movement that helped me become unfrozen? But guys, it didn't actually click. The dots didn't connect until years later in that police training. Do you remember what we were talking about? Your body's physiological response to fear? Your mind starts doing this stuff because it's preparing your body to move. It's preparing your body to fight or flee. And so in that moment, moving, pushing, that was the most natural thing I could do. It was like I was embracing what my body was already getting ready for. And it really works. I use this all the time now. So whenever I have a really tough business call to make, I pace. And whenever I have a really hard decision, I take a walk. And I do something else when I feel really panicked. I want everybody to do this with me. I want you to bring your shoulders up to your ears. Take a deep breath. And then let it out and relax. Doesn't that feel great? The mind-body connection is powerful. And so if you start to become afraid and frozen, move. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've moved around a lot on stage. That's no accident. Because I am terrified right now. How many people are afraid of public speaking? Good, you should be. This is a challenge. As soon as I walked out, my knees were weak, my stomach was through the floor, my heart's been beating out of my chest. It's been a challenge. But the reason why I'm here, the reason why I'm facing this fear is because I'm so passionate about helping people seize these points of courage. And I believe that we don't all need to be fearless, but instead we can learn to act fearlessly. Now, this is really cliche to ask, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Imagine what you could accomplish if you could learn how to act fearlessly. What jumps would you take? What passions would you pursue? And what impact could you make? Guys, I challenge each and every one of you just to try the tool set that we talked about here today. Arrive at points of courage as soon as you can. Explore what your mind and your body are telling you. And then finally, take action. Physically move. I think every single one of us in this room has the capability for great things. It's just on the other side of fear. So stop trying to be fearless and learn how to act fearlessly. Thanks, guys.
All right, it's great. So I loved a lot of Ben's takeaways, and he's having a breakout session later today, more focused on profiling your customers. So some of the things that he talked about, which really resonated with me, was the messages that we receive about don't feel a certain way, don't feel stressed, don't feel your feelings, which is pretty accurate. Oh, like those are a lot of the messages we have, and I thought it was powerful to think about feeling that and using it to your advantage. And then also the points of courage moments. We all have those, whether they're life moments or even on the job moments, even making one of those hard phone calls that he discussed. And then embracing movement, which is really cool. I love that. So thank you so much, Ben. Our next speaker is in Missoula, but his background is very international. He has traveled the world working with brands, and they're really big brands. His passion for brand innovation, workplace engagement, and basically anything that's happening in the world that's really creative and innovative is intoxicating. Please welcome Partners Creative Director of Brand and Talent Strategy, Kevin Cohane.
So I'm going to talk a little bit today about two big things. One is the skills that we have as individuals and how we cultivate those skills. And the other one is about something that is maybe a little bit strange for a brand and marketing guy to be talking about. But it's artificial intelligence and cognitive computing. And as I was preparing for this speech, I've been doing a lot of work with an organization on their technology transformation go-to-market offering. And it's been really eye-opening in terms of what's out there. So, without further ado, this robot is coming to take your job. You've all heard that, right? IoT, Internet of Things, analytics, big data, artificial intelligence. Raise your hand if you've kind of heard that term in the past couple weeks, right? Yeah, everybody. So it's not just the purview of these kind of weirdo IT people out there. It's actually hitting a lot of us in a lot of different ways. And we've got ourselves in a moment that's absolutely momentous, I think, in human history. I read this stuff initially thinking, come on, it's not that big a deal. People have been talking about artificial intelligence for years, but we're actually in the eye of a perfect storm for this stuff. And that perfect storm is actually made up of four things. The first thing is data, right? So we've got all this data that is now being made available and being captured and put in data centers on the internet and is accessible. And we can now access it more easily, more readily than ever before. One of the reasons we can do that is a second point. Right, you've probably heard about Moore's law and computers getting faster and faster. So computing speed is getting faster, but it's not just the processors themselves. It's actually the fact that we've got distributed networks or cloud computing that are making it possible to compute so much faster than ever before, it's absolutely mind-boggling. And we're not talking about twice as fast, or 5 times as fast, or 10 times as fast, or 100 times as fast. We're actually talking about 1,000 times, 5,000 times, 10,000 times as fast. And the big clincher is in a way that you can afford, right? Companies can now access this stuff on demand and scale on demand to go and look at their data. So the third thing is like, well, okay, how do you then take that data, take a computer and do something with it? Well, that's called data science and analytics. And data science and analytics has made incredible leaps in the past even year or two, largely because of faster computers and more access to data, which means that these really smart data scientists and people who write algorithms are creating new ways of writing the algorithms that help interpret all of this data, right? So they're getting better at writing the things that make the data easier to use and access. And then the final thing is cognitive technology. So I was over in the loft there, and one of the gentlemen behind the coffee bar there had his little personal digital assistant, and we said, oh, 5-minute warning to come do my talk. And he said, oh, set timer for 5 minutes, right? So cognitive intelligence includes things like natural language processing, image recognition, language recognition, the fuzzy logic that is now allowing computers to go and make connections that in the past it used to be humans that could make those connections. And we're all experiencing it. We all use some kind of robotic process automation in our day-to-day lives, right? If you use a map program on your phone, or if you use a personal digital assistant, or if you interact with a chatbot on a retail site, there's already a lot of robotic process automation taking place around us, which is kind of the low end of this artificial intelligence we keep talking about and hearing about. But clearly the interesting thing is now we're getting to the point where computers and machine intelligence can not only match and replicate human thinking, but in a lot of ways it can start to exceed human thinking. And that's pretty incredible. And we're going to be at an incredibly disruptive and exciting stage in human history. And I'm pretty convinced from all the work I've been doing, even though it's not technology, it's brand and marketing, that this is going to have a huge impact on everybody in this room. So if you haven't read Marty Neumeier's books, mainly on branding, this one's more about education, but do read his books. Short, easy to read, great books. Marty Neumeier, his name is. And this is a great quote from Marty, and it really leads to a couple of really interesting questions. The first one being, 2 out of 3 students in secondary education today are going to be doing jobs that do not exist in today's economy. And 50% of the jobs that we've got in the corporate world are probably going to be replaced by automated techniques, right? So this isn't a change that is happening in the next generation, so we don't need to worry about it. It's a change that's coming down the pike right now. 2, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe at the outset 10 years. So it's going to affect all of us in pretty significant ways. And it's going to require us to adapt. And how we adapt is going to be really important to how we move forward as individuals, as businesses, as organizations, as society. So we talked a little bit about data and how all of this data is now available. We still have beautiful libraries, and I look at that and think, someone's going to turn that into a server farm or a data center. Nice big building, you can get air through there, get rid of all those books and everything, right? But the point is we now have access to all of this information, all of this knowledge at our fingertips, at speed, right? And speed is something that's going to come up in this talk quite a few times. Speed is what is making all of this stuff happen. It used to be that you had invention here, and then over time, you have impact over here, right? And it used to take a long time sometimes for that invention to actually work its way through whatever systems we have in order to have impact. that gap is really, really closing. And obviously the reason it's closing is because of a lot of the technologies I've been talking about. So the conundrum here is what I like to call the bicycle challenge or the bicycle paradox. I love this photo. I found it. It's a beautiful photo. And the way I explain this is that some of the information that you can access using, search engines and so on, you don't really need to have any kind of mastery of the subject at hand, right? If you want to download a recipe, right, or you want to learn how to put in a piece of drywall, it used to be maybe you had to learn how to cook or be trained how to cook, or maybe you had to work on a construction crew for a while, but pretty much you can watch a video online and figure out maybe the first one you put up's not going to be that good, but the second one's going to be not too bad, right? So we can kind of fake it. But some of the things we want to do actually do require mastery, right? You can't just look up some things and suddenly have mastered that skill. You can read about it, you can learn about it, and the bicycle is a great analogy for this to me. So let's say you want to change your inner tube on your bicycle, right? You can watch a video online, and I guarantee you, if you got the right tools, within 5 minutes, you're going to already be able to change the inner tube on your bike, right? First time might be a little bit rough, and you'll learn a little bit, but you'll get there. But let's say you want to become a professional bicycle racer or cyclist. You can go to the internet, and you can probably look up what are the different governing bodies. What are the different competitions out there? What kind of gear should I get? What kind of bike should I get? Right? What kind of training regime and diet should I be looking into doing? Maybe even what kind of coach should I be looking for? So you can find out a lot of information about that. But it's not going to make you a professional racer, right? Professional cyclist. And if you want to learn to ride a bike, if you've never ridden one before, you can search all the tips in the world on the internet about how to ride a bike, and they might actually get you there quicker. But there's going to come a point where if you want to learn how to ride a bike, you got to touch one and sit on it and fall over, and then learn how to ride a bike. You can't do that just by reading about it or just by looking it up. And I think that's a really, really important point. And that's one of the things I think we sometimes forget about all this information and data we've got. That you can learn about something, but you actually have to do it in order to get good at it. Which brings us to the T. I think the title of this talk was, Are You T-shaped, or How T-shaped Are You? So in my own personal life, I've always been really fascinated by this idea of specialist knowledge, right? Which is kind of the downstroke of the T. Let's say you want to talk about biology. You can get English or a class in biology in high school. You can get a degree in biology. You can then get a master's and a PhD. You get multiple PhDs, and suddenly you got somebody who's incredibly knowledgeable and capable in biology. But then you've got the cross of the T, which is more general skills, like the entire range of things that a human being can learn about going across the top of that T. And I've always been fascinated and challenged and inspired by, well, what one should I be doing? Which one should you be doing? Because we all have different T-shapes, right? Some of us are, like a concert pianist, you're kind of a ½ inch wide and a mile deep. And other people, some with generalist skill sets are probably a mile wide and an inch deep. And clearly reality is somewhere in between. We all have different sort of downstrokes and different things that we're interested in. The interesting thing here, and there's plenty of research and videos that you can watch, and I'm not the first person to invent this, but innovation has traditionally happened in two ways. So innovation in the vertical part of the T, specialist knowledge, has tended to be incremental and staged with people who are specialists trying to move the practice of whatever it is that they're a specialist in forward. That one little step to generally and arrive at an innovation that's going to help do something better or solve a problem. But most of the real breakthrough innovations come from the crossbar of the T, where somebody deep down one of the downstrokes of the T moves to the side and looks left or right and actually makes a connection with something that's not really that related to the actual specialism that they operate in. Stephen Johnson has written a book called Where Ideas Come From, which I also recommend. And he talks about innovation as ideas having sex, right? And you want to make sure that if you're having ideas having sex, that you're expanding your gene pool, right? Because otherwise you've got a problem. So you kind of want to have your ideas from different downstrokes of the T in order to come up with those ideas that you might not have thought about if you were just blinkered in the downstroke. So my own personal story, or there's an anecdote I'm going to share with you that was kind of that moment in my life where I realized, you know what? I have to stop self-censoring myself, right? Because I was always the guy in the meeting who would blurt out something and people would look at me like I was absolutely crazy. Like, what does that have to do with whatever we're talking about? So I worked in London for about 15 years, and when I first arrived there, the organization I worked for did organizational change and transformation. And one of our clients came to us and said, you know what? We'd really like to benchmark our intranet. You know, we don't know if it's any good or not. We've got this intranet, we use it for knowledge management and all kinds of stuff. And this was, 15, 17 years ago maybe. And they just said, we just want to see if we can benchmark its performance. So being the clever little clog that I was, I went out and talked to some people about benchmarking. And all the benchmarking people said, no way. There's no way you can benchmark an intranet. You just don't have, you can't compare oranges to oranges or apples to apples. There are too many variables, so you can't really benchmark it. Sorry, Kevin. So then I went out and talked to my IT friends, my IT colleagues, and they all said, oh, no way can you benchmark an intranet. Well, people develop them in different ways. Different industries will use different intranets for different purposes, right? They're going to have different use cases. Why did they develop the intranet in the first place? So I was told by the experts that it couldn't be done, which is never a good idea with me. So I worked in the kind of design change industry, and I kind of stumbled across this whole thing of human-computer interaction and usability, which a lot of people know about now, but back then it was kind of this weird boffin weirdos in the corner world. And this slide was the slide I encountered, and absolutely hilariously, it's still there, and it still looks like this, which is awesome. International standards for human-computer interaction and usability. So if you look at those bullet points, hopefully you can read them. That's everything you need right there to benchmark an intranet, right? Use of the product with effectiveness, I can measure that. Efficiency, I can measure that. Satisfaction of the user, I can measure that. In a particular context of use, I can test for that, right? So suddenly, we developed a business benchmarking intranets. Nobody else thought it could be done. We eventually created the Intranet Benchmarking Forum, which is now the Digital Workplace Group. And it became the leading global usability and benchmarking forum for corporate intranets, right? All because we made a connection that nobody else had ever thought of making. The other point I'd make really quickly here is that that fourth bullet, the capability of an organization to apply user-centered design, we actually then started using usability principles when we were helping companies do change management, right? So card sorting techniques, prototyping, iteration, right? This was 17 years ago. Now they call it agile, and now they call it design thinking, right? So I guess the lesson for you as entrepreneurs is trust that little inner voice. Don't be afraid to be a weirdo. Don't be afraid to try to make those connections. So I think the world of the T is going to look a lot more like this as we go forward, right? So it's going to be more of a mesh. And all this technology is going to help reduce the friction in our ability to move vertically or our ability to move crossways. And I think that's really the skill that we're going to have to cultivate as all of this cognitive technology starts to influence how we work and how we live. That the kind of skills that once were deep in that kind of downstroke of the T, that knowledge is not going to have as long a shelf life as it used to have. So the ability to kind of move into the adjacent space and maybe move into the space next to that, what again is called that adjacent possibilities where you're going to kind of find those breakthrough ideas, and also get better at managing when you don't know what's happening in a world that is volatile, a world that's uncertain, a world of chaos, and a world that is ambiguous. Those kind of lateral skills are going to become increasingly important because it's not always going to be that vertical skill that gets you there. And no, I'm not going to get all spiritual here with you, but the other thing I guess in my career that I've learned is when things get out of balance, and whether it's business and technology, whether it's humanities and sciences, whether it's machines and human beings, when they get out of balance is generally when problems tend to occur. So I think trying to find that sense of balance between these things is going to be really, really critical. And whether you're an entrepreneur starting a business, you have a small business, or whether you're in a large, mature organization, that's going to be a real challenge for leadership to figure out how do I get that right balance between the kind of general skills and lateral skills we've talked about and those deep specialist skills. So if you think about this as another metaphor of the T kind of laid across a traffic junction, excuse me. If you only look across the street at where you want to get to, there's a straight line there, and you can probably walk across that street and get there really, really quickly. The problem is twofold. One is, if you're not looking at the traffic coming, you might get knocked down. But the other thing is you might look to your left or look to your right and figure out maybe there's a smarter way to do this, maybe there's a better experience I can have, or maybe actually that's not where I want to go, maybe I actually want to go over there. So it's a pretty cheap metaphor maybe, but this whole idea of looking left and right is a skill that we all brilliantly need to cultivate. So I guess the thing I'd like you all to take away from the talk today is that as much as all of this technology is creating amazing opportunities and amazing disruption, that it's actually, there are very few problems that are going to be solved by technology alone, even with artificial intelligence and all these amazing tools. And there are very few problems that can be solved by human beings and great thinkers alone, right? It's actually those two things working together, that balance that I was talking about, that's going to get us through this so that we can do it in a way that keeps us sane, because the amount of rapid, unprecedented change coming down the pike is going to be pretty freaky, I think. But also, I think it'll help us make better decisions and more rounded decisions and more creative decisions. And instead of being dominated and mastered by all this technology, we will become the master of the technology. And with any luck, a robot won't come and take your job unless you really want it to. So thank you very much.
Very awesome and scary. Robots taking our jobs, the future. And I think there were some amazing things, one of which I will take with me wherever I go. Innovation equals ideas having sex. That's awesome. And then also the T-shape of thinking about where we are on that spectrum of specialist knowledge, or a combination of that versus a broader crossbar of the T. Which side do we fall on? I thought that those were both lovely. So for the next presenter, she's going to give us some energy for the rest of the day and teach us some yoga moves for better thinking. Please welcome yogi and art enthusiast Kate Crouch, who will be demonstrating yoga.
Hi. Oh my gosh, I have a headset on. This is the first time this has ever happened to me. I'm really excited. Kind of feel like Shakira. So I would like everyone to get up out of their seat. You can place your pens, pencils. I know I'm supposed to stand in the light, so here I am. And then I'd like you to find a place in the room where you can either hold on to one of the benches or the back of a chair, somewhere that's flat. So as you're doing that, And as well, if you can, maybe stretch the arms out and make sure that you're not touching anyone else. Yeah, super. So like she said, my name is Kate Crouch, and I just started my own business called Mind Yourself. It is art integration in education. So I teach mindfulness activities to adults and children, and I as well am a yoga instructor. So the first thing I would like you to do is take a full body stretch. So just stretch the arms and stretch the legs. Just kind of take maybe a couple of yawns. And then just take a few neck rolls. One direction, and then the other direction. And then we're going to do a little countdown. So everybody know their left from the right? Great. So first take your left hand, you're going to shake it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then take the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Left foot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right foot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A little faster. Left hand, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. Big breath in. Big breath out. And then we're going to do a little stuff called brain gym. Has anyone ever heard of brain gym? Anyone done brain gym? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to begin with slightly tapping the face. Tap the head. Tap the back of the neck. Tap the front of the neck. Tap the arms. Just waking the skin up. Front of the body, move all the way down the body. Move all the way up the body. Then it gets a little bit weird. Be safe with your bodies here. We're going to slap ourselves slightly. Yeah, move over the head. Move over the back. Give yourself a little wake up. Yeah, I mean, I said gentle, but come on. Wake yourselves up a little bit. Back of the body, front of the chest. And then we're going to brush the top of the head. Can you all hear me without this? Are you okay? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to brush the top of the head. Once between the 2 feet. So roll the shoulders down and away. You're going to inhale through the nose for the count of 1, 2, 3, 4, and out through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. In for 1, 2, 3, 4. Out for 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. And out. So you're going to feel a little bit nice and calm. Maybe it's just makes them out up here on stage. The next thing we're going to do is do brain buttons. You're going to take your middle finger and your thumb and place them right underneath the collarbone. And then take your opposite hand and place it right at the sternum. And take a couple of nice deep breaths in and out. And what we're doing here is that we're activating and stimulating blood flow through the carotid arteries going up to the brain. So this gives a little bit more, it normalizes the blood pressure, and it's nice and calming. So if you're ever feeling a little anxious, taking our brain buttons here. And the next thing that we're going to do is called a cross crawl. So just take the one elbow and cross it across the body, touching the knee, back and forth. So this cross activation stimulates both the right and left hemispheres of the brain. Again, if you're sitting at the desk, you just need a little bit of steadiness in the body, going back and forth, right and left. And then we're going to move into our energizer. So this is where I'd like you to either take the back of a chair if you're at a railing. And we're going to bring our chest forward, inhale, and flex the spine up, taking a nice big inhale, and then exhale, curling under. Inhale, come forward, and exhale, curling under. And so this is stimulating the cerebrospinal fluid, calming the whole nervous system. Couple more, inhaling up next one we're going to do is this is where you need your arm space. So a different spinal flex, so as wide as you can get. We're going to take our right hand, place it on the left chest, and bring the left arm back behind you. Inhaling here. Exhale, come forward. Left hand, right side. Nice stability through the heels, maybe even like a little bend in the knees. And inhale left, exhale right. Back and forth. You can close the eyes. And we're going to be here for just a moment, waking up the whole side of the spine. You can even start tapping the chest. And then inhale and exhale. Next thing we're going to do is called hookup. Some people, if you take yoga, it's also known as eagle pose. Take your right arm out in front of you, and then cross the left arm underneath, crossing at the elbows and the wrists. If this does not work for you, you can just hold on to the shoulders. From here, you're just going to step the right foot across the left, squeezing at the inner thigh. So here we're squeezing the upper part of the thighs, and we're squeezing through the armpit. And you can also, if you feel comfortable and balanced, you're going to take the tip of the tongue and place it on the roof of your mouth. And this stimulates the middle of the brain. You're going to hold this for just a moment. This is also nice and calming for the body, especially if you have little kids that are running all over the place, getting them to stand in this position for a moment. And then release that and switch sides. Taking the right arm out in front, crossing the left arm underneath. And squeeze. Again, touching the top of the tongue. And release down here. Shake all of that out. And the next thing we're going to do is I want you to hold on to the front of your bench or whatever it is. Take your right foot out first. And then take the left foot, about like a foot and a half behind. We're going to do a calf pump. So bend the front knee and lift the back heel. And then straighten. Bending, straightening. And this is relieving tension all through the hips and the backs of the legs. Bend and straighten. Bend, straighten. A few more times. And then switching sides. Working with the breath. Inhale to bend, exhale to straighten. And then bring the feet together. The arms over the head, inhale up, and we're just going to roll down one vertebrae at a time. Roll all the way down into your forward fold. And just let the head be nice and heavy. If you want to make the feet a little bit wider, and let the crown of the head dangle down. Engage slightly through the upper thighs. And then sway right and left, right and left. Now roll up one vertebrae at a time. And then come back to stand. So, different parts of the brain. So if you're doing a long day at work, or if you have kids, any one of these is going to help to reactivate and stimulate and give a little bit more energy to the body. We're going to end with an Om. So it's A-U-M. And the idea of this is that the sound actually, I have a beautiful slide that gave all of the scientific reasons for oming. But what it does, it actually stimulates cell regeneration throughout the whole body. So it's that vibration. If anyone does any tonal work or works in music, that vibration through the body actually stimulates the cells to regenerate. And so it's Om, A-U-M, starting at the back of the mouth and moving forward. Anyone else ever omed before in a big group? Okay, you're going to be my leaders. You're going to take a nice big breath in through the nose, and then out through the mouth. And this time in, and all
All right. So hopefully that got you up and out of your seats and you're feeling limber and loose. Thank you so much, Kate. That was a really nice break for everybody. And now we're moving into our next speaker, who is a UM alum, avid community advocate, entrepreneur, and general badass. She's built an awesome business in Butte, America. She's a talented leader, great speaker, and a universal force. Please welcome Courtney McKee, CEO and co-founder of Headframe Spirits.
Hello, you guys can hear me all right? I'm here today to talk about Headframe. I'm here to talk about storytelling, but I'm here as half of the Headframe founding crew. It was myself and my husband, and John is not here to join us today. So I'm actually going to start with an ask. I want him to feel less left out. Could I ask you guys on the count of 3 to wave and say, "Hi, John"? Okay, 1, 2, 3. You guys are the best. That's so awesome. That's going to make his day. Thank you. So that part's silly and fun. But I'm going to get serious for a second here. I'm feeding you a quote. You've heard it before, but pay attention to it if you would. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win. You guys have heard this before, right? This is JFK. This is his moon speech. He gave this on September 12, 1962, and it resonates. Nothing about my resume prepared me in any way for what I do. I grew up in Connecticut. I moved to Missoula, sight unseen, only school I applied to. It seemed like the Wild West, right? It seemed like this new frontier where I was like the, 20th century Lewis and Clark with a car and an interstate system. But I felt every bit of that pioneering spirit when I came out here. I fell in love with this place. I fell in love with the sense of community, the way people treat one another. And I got a degree in English literature because I was going to be a librarian, and I still might. I fell for a Butte boy. We actually met at a wedding. We fell in love, super classy, in the alley behind the Rhino. And I say I'm not kidding, and that's not an innuendo in any way. We actually literally just fell. And then 1 year to the day later, he took me to dinner at the Redbird and then proposed to me, got down on one knee in that same alley behind the Rhino. They've paved it now, so it's a lot classier than it was back then. John and I have always been really career-oriented. He worked in IT, he worked in engineering firms, and wound up getting hired on as the third guy at a biodiesel company. Based out of Butte, they built biodiesel refineries around the Midwest, these 10 to 60 million gallon a year facilities. And he was gone. He was gone 80% of the time. He was out building refineries from the time our son was 6 months old. He missed the next 6 months of Cooper's life. When my sister passed away and orphaned her 8-year-old daughter, John was in Mississippi and I was in Montana, and we had to meet in Connecticut. And made the plan and executed it to adopt Tuesday, our niece who's now 18. But he was gone for her first years as we were drawing her into and really making her a part of our family and our story. It was hard, it was crappy, but it was an investment that we were making in this great job that he had and this great opportunity that the job presented, and then the recession hit and the job disappeared. And the investment felt like maybe it had been for nothing. I just don't believe in bad stories. I don't believe in allowing a story to have a lousy ending. You'll get a low point in a story, but that's the opportunity where you spring back up and write amazing new stuff from it. And that's where Headframe Spirits came from. Our concept was founded because it was important to us that we be able to stay in Butte. It was important that we write better stories for our family. It was really important to us that John not work for anybody else anymore. If this is what it looks like when you work for somebody else and you put your whole heart into it and then it just gets ripped out from under you, we were over that. And we wanted to write better stories for our community. And that's where a little bit of this strategy starts to come in. We could have written a better story just for John and Courtney. We could have done something small for just John and Courtney. But why stop there? If you can go bigger, why not try? And that's what we did. We set out to, and are still in the middle of these goals of elevating the community of Butte. I love to ask people, like, show of hands, who has a favorable impression of Butte? That's a few. I encourage those of you who did not put your hands up to come and spend a day or spend a weekend. It's a really remarkable place to get to be. It has all of Missoula's potential and all of that great feel of personable community. We're still economically challenged, and that's where we aim to plug in. So Headframe is 3 different things. Some of you may have tried our spirits before. That's lovely, and thank you. We make booze, we operate a tasting room, and we also build distillation equipment for other distilleries. We took John's background in biodiesel distillation and applied the technology, adapted the technology to something that was a little more fun. So we do these 3 separate things. We're playing in ag, value-added agriculture. We're playing in tourism and the storytelling that we get to do for and about our community, our tasting room as a portal to experiences and stories in and about Butte. And then we're doing this like straight up hardcore manufacturing, welding and fabrication that happens kind of behind the scenes, but is a huge piece of what we do and how we're working not only to elevate Butte, but to elevate the industry of craft spirits manufacturers. Let's give these guys every good tool and every advantage that we can, because it's a hard business to be in. It's an expensive business to be in. We're 5 years in now. We are the largest distillery in Montana. We've created 31 jobs with benefits. We've had over a $7 million economic impact in our community. We have equipment sold all over the U.S. and now Canada. And we celebrated Christmas last year by becoming not 1 but 2 certified B corporations, right? So benefit corporations. We've made the commitment and the statement that we are here not to serve our shareholders, John and Courtney, but to serve our community, right? To make our little corner of the world a better place to get to be. As we move forward, as Headframe, our goal is to sell our company to our employees. We want the passion for the brand, for the business, for the ownership to stay in Butte. You see companies like High West in Salt Lake sold for $160 million. That's awesome. Good for them. I'm sure that $160 million feels like a really great return on the investment made. But for my money and my effort, I'd rather make nickels, pennies on that, and know that what I built is going to stay, that the passion for the place and the passion for the brand and the passion for the story stays put. So our goal is to sell to our employees. We're in the process of taking over a former Superfund site, a former mine yard in Butte, and building that out into both the largest distillery west of the Mississippi and a tourism destination unlike anything Butte has ever seen. And then we're also looking to grow our employee base to over 100 people, which is a pretty damn big deal for Butte. So I say this, and I'm proud of these things. I'm giving you this really short version of the story and how it got started. I want to tell you that it sounds lovely, but the shit is hard, right? 8 banks told us no before the 9th finally bought into what we were trying to do. We very specifically said we wanted no outside investors because we wanted no outside influence on what we were trying to create. We very naively said that we were going to sink or swim on our own merit, and it turns out several months in we learned that that's not how it works. You sink or swim on the merit of the team that you build and the people that you surround yourselves with. And so we've taken that back. We bought our building while my husband was unemployed because we couldn't get a bank to loan to us to fund the whole project, and we were afraid that we were going to lose the building. We had a buy-sell, and we were afraid we were going to lose it. So we dug deep. We took every nickel that we could rub together, and we made a down payment on a building on a 90-day loan, crossing our fingers and hoping that we would find somebody that wanted to invest in us during that next 90 days. Each of these lenders we went to, they said, "This is the best business plan we've ever seen. Boy, you guys really understand your financials. You understand the industry. This is really fantastic. We're not going to loan you money, but this is really tremendous." Thanks. So we bought this building while John was unemployed, and we hoped, right? And we just adopted this little girl who grew up with roaches and no hot water, and here we were terrified again that she was going to think that that's how the world really worked, right? Not just in the home where she was raised, but in our home too. And I think my lowest moment was when the fire department came around doing their annual food drive, and Cooper, my little guy, said, "Mom, are we going to get a bag of food and give it to the firemen?" And I said, "Oh, baby, not this year." And he said, "Oh, how come?" And I said, "Just 'cause, not this year. We'll do it next year." But the nice young kid comes to the door and he knocks and he says, "Hey, I'm collecting for the food bank." And I sent Cooper to go fill up a bag of food, and I handed it over. And I really asked myself the question, was I going to be turning around and going back to the food bank to get that bag of food back? We were broke. We were so broke. And it was the scariest damn place to be. But you dig deep and you learn a lot about yourself and your ability to persevere and to believe in your vision and believe in your goals and hope that the universe will believe in you also. It hadn't believed in John with the last job that he had had and all of that effort that he put in. But maybe that was less of an isolated incident. Maybe that was the learning experience that was setting us up to be ready and able to do this. So you dig deep and you call on everybody that you know and everybody that loves you, and you pick their brains about what you're trying to do. In our case, that meant feeding a lot of people a lot of whiskey, which is okay. That's good feedback. Like, people like that. But we asked a lot of questions, and we got a lot of great support. And the question asking didn't stop when we finally did get funded, when we were finally able to open our doors on Leap Day of 2012. So last year was our first official birthday. And we're proud of that. And we don't stop saying that we're not the smartest people in the room, and we don't stop asking questions. Just because we got the doors open doesn't mean we know everything. It means now we're in a whole world where we know even less than we did before. But this shit is hard. But entrepreneurs, innovators, thinkers, makers, doers, we don't do what we do because it's easy, right? We do it because we love it, and we do it in part because it's hard. We do it because we can't not, and because we all eat hard for breakfast, right? And because Kennedy also said it in that same famous speech, this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them. My goal is to use my breakout session to talk about strategy, to talk about how, and I'll stop there. But I want to give you a handful of takeaways. We've been really lucky to be able to build a career and a business around the life that we want to live. We started at the end, the goal, the dream, and then built a plan to move ourselves from the place where we were to that place that we want to be. And now, in fact, my most important job is to keep 31 people's eyes looking on that same point on the horizon. Keep us fixed on that place that we're moving, where they become the owners of this company, where we are the biggest damn distillery west of the Mississippi, and where they get to take complete ownership of that. Don't ever give up more than you have to. It's really hard to walk that back. I stand by not taking on investors. It added 8 months to our plan. It was the hardest point ever in my life, but nobody makes decisions about Headframe other than John and Courtney, and that would be really hard to work back from. Surround yourselves with people smarter than you and ask them all the questions. We have a board of advisors made up of people who have strategic bits of knowledge and experience, careers that are nothing like ours, who loan their intelligence and their experience to our advantage. I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to fill up a room full of people who are going to help me elevate my game. And don't be afraid to ask, right? Because what's the worst that can happen, right? Someone says no. How bad is no, actually? It's honestly, it's not that bad. I'm going to end with an ask, right? I'm starting with an ask and I'm ending with an ask, and this one's a two-parter. If you haven't, try our spirits, right? Try Headframe's booze. Go bigger, though. come to our tasting room, let us make you a cocktail, buy a drink in a bar in Missoula made with Headframe product. Every time you do that, you're helping us help Butte write new stories and think about itself in new ways. Each cocktail matters. Each bottle matters. And go even bigger than that. Don't stop with just what we make. Try all craft spirits. You've got Montgomery right here in town. You have, in addition to us in Montgomery, 18 other licensed distilleries in the state of Montana. Drink their booze, go other places, and drink local. You're helping make people's dreams come true every time you do. Each of these stories is local, and they're fed by that passion and vision, and you can help further that. And to the entrepreneurs and those with an entrepreneurial spirit, put yourselves out there, right? Take a risk, make an ask, make an offer, but put yourself out there, because honestly, as John and I have already learned, there are fates far worse than failure. It's a stepping stone, not a period at the end of a sentence. Thank you.
Way to go. That was lovely. Courtney is incredibly humble, and she was Montana Entrepreneur of the Year in 2015. She has a breakout session at 11:30 at Lake Missoula Tea Company, so feel free to connect with her there if you want to learn more about the building of Headframe Spirits. I think it's entitled like Headframe Spirits Part 2. And I also wanted to point out that at the start of the competition at 12 p.m., Headframe Spirits is sponsoring some cocktails there as well. So if you want an afternoon cocktail, just come back still energized afterward. Okay, our next guest is another amazing woman. We have some amazing women on stage. She is also a UM alum who has worked her way up the corporate chain. She splits her time, she lives mostly in San Francisco, but splits her time between San Francisco, New York City, and then our very own Missoula, Montana. Over the last 15 years, she's had lots of experience leading large teams, and now she works with change on the daily. Please welcome the Director of Change Management for Gap Incorporated, Stacy Maloney.
Hello. What Morgan failed to mention is she and I are now next door neighbors. So I'm pretty excited to have Morgan right in my neighborhood. Today I'm going to talk about some things that are scary and some things that I'm going to ask. There's some audience participation that will be involved in today's speech, so some asks. I was happy to hear Ben's speech, so I know why I'm nervous and why I'm feeling like my stomach is on the ground right now. And as some of you who know me, I do change management, and it's my jokey tagline, but it seems to be true that if I'm in the room, your life is changing somehow. So today I'm going to try to push you over that edge a little bit and make you think of those scary things. And as Ben told us, it's okay to be scared a little bit. So today I want you to think of, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story of my life over the last couple of years, and I'm going to also incorporate some lessons from a very cool and amazing friend and mentor of mine. And then I'm going to try to tie it back to what does that look like for you all as entrepreneurs. So think about really amazing times in your life, like life-changing times when you're like, I would go back to that time in a heartbeat. I had a time like that about 2 years ago. Life was going pretty well. I was living in San Francisco, working for the Gap. I worked with a really amazing team. We worked for our Gap Canada kids and baby stores. And our job was literally to stylishly outfit Canadian children in denim. So we would sit around the room and talk about launching skinny jeans for babies. It was a pretty fun and exciting job. And I'd been with Gap for about 10 years at that point, and I walked into work one day and found out that I'd lost my job. They eliminated my job, my team, over 100 people in our building. Our jobs were being eliminated and they were being moved to New York with or without us. But if any of you have ever been through any bigger organizational changes like this, it was going to happen over 4 months. So there was this weird, awkward time of transition where some people just jumped ship while other people kind of sat around hoping that something would come their way, and others just didn't know what they were going to do. So a lot of, as you can imagine, fear and anxiety about this. And so I was kind of weirdly excited, and I'm in change management now, so I actually thrive on change and helping people see the future. If you ever want to know what the next 6 or 12 months look like, I'm not a fortune teller, but I definitely have an ability to kind of see that future. And so I called my boyfriend up, and we went out and actually had cocktails that night and celebrated this fear and unknown and excitement. And once I kind of got my head around the situation, I started to think of things a little bit differently. I started thinking of work as more optional. I mean, they'd eliminated my job, so I was like, well, I guess I'll go into work today. And and others decided not to. But I started to think, like, what do I really want to be doing? What's the cool stuff in my life that I should be doing? And this is a little side tip that you probably won't learn at a leadership clinic, but if you ever really want to know what your employees think of you, of their job, of where they want to go, just lay everybody off at once. It was a couple of months of some really interesting conversations. And as I kind of was going through that time and reflecting for this speech, what things I could share or, what helped me get through that time, there were really 3 lessons. And I used to teach public speaking here at the university, so the 3 lessons that we're going to learn today. But you should have a card in your hand, and we won't have the lights up yet, but when you need to use the card, we'll turn the lights up a little bit. But the 3 lessons we're going to talk about today are landing the high five, live a sabbatical in your everyday life, and shoot the moon. And so the first lesson is I had a really high five awakening, I like to call it. So I'm a runner, or I know there were some people that I run with sometimes that might be here today. I'm a slow jogger and I own it. I'm not really a runner. So I was going through Golden Gate Park about 6 or 7 years ago. And as I'm running through the park, there's this petite, vibrant woman running at me with her hand in the air, yelling high five, good job. And I'm like, okay. And I just kind of kept running past her. And as I ran past her in this high five, I kind of felt a little jump in my step. And I was like, that was amazing. Who high-fived you in the middle of a park? And I went home and I told my boyfriend about it, and it was so impactful that obviously I'm sharing it with you today. And then fast forward about a year later, and I was at Gap and having lunch with a new friend that I'd been introduced to. And I still remember where we had lunch because there was a mobile truck that was selling Gap jeans and tacos. To this day, I don't know where that was dreamt, but if you entrepreneurs are looking for some kind of idea, I recommend sell the jeans first and then the tacos. For the women in the audience, I was like, why would you want to eat tacos and then try on jeans? But so as I was talking to Sarah, and she started with all this crazy passion telling me how she liked to go running and then throw out high fives to random runners, I realized in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, you were my high fiver. You were the woman who ran past me in the park last year and high-fived me. And we realized, yep, we run the same route, and yep, I was your high-fiver. And so Sarah and I became really fast friends, and we ran a lot in Golden Gate Park. And if anyone's ever been to Golden Gate Park, it's just full of nature, which we get here all the time. But there's actually a flower garden that we would run by, and she would literally stop and say, "Can we just smell the flowers?" And so we'd stop and smell the roses, and then we would go about our day. And that early time with Sarah really made me start to think about, I think, what Ferris Bueller taught most of us Gen Xers, that life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And so even when you're moving really, really quickly, you have an opportunity to land a high five. Right now, I just want you to turn to somebody in the audience and high five them. Like Ben said, get some momentum. All right. It sounds like you landed some good high fives. Hopefully, given that it's dark, nobody accidentally missed somebody and slapped them. I apologize if that happened to anybody out there. But now I want to teach you what I learned about landing the high five. So we high five, you throw out a high five and you go about your business. But on your card, we don't need the lights up, I don't think, for this one. It says high five on the top. Just draw a little bullseye. Or anywhere on the card if you're not a rule follower. A lot of entrepreneurs are like, I want to put it on the back really big. You can do what you want. And now that you're a little bit focused, now we're thinking about the high five. Now pick somebody that you're going to high five. And I want you to yell in the moment at them like, awesome job, way to be here, glad you're here. And then a little trick that I learned from my friend the other night is it's all about the elbow. Focus on their elbow and you'll land the high five. So pick your person, throw words of encouragement, and then land the high five. All right, so a little bit more enthusiasm with that high five. And it really didn't take much longer to do that high five than it did the first one. And so on my runs, I find out that sometimes you get really good high fives. Sometimes you totally whiff. And honestly, I run in Golden Gate Park a lot, so it was last Tuesday night I did my little non-scientific study. I'm in the business and liberal arts world, so there was no scientific study to this one, but I threw out 18 high fives on my run in Golden Gate Park, 3.5 miles, 18 high fives, 14 landed, 3 people laughed out loud, 1 woman totally whiffed, and then 3 people just didn't hear me. I wasn't loud enough, but I had this joy of intention that I was at least putting it out there. And some guy, I think, almost tripped, turning around like, what did she just do? And I was like, oh, sorry, keep going, keep going. And occasionally I'll throw out my high five and people duck because they don't know why you would be throwing a hand at them. So it's the joy and the intention of giving the high five. And I think of the high five, it's very literal. I think most of us have done high fives before this. It's not revolutionary. But it's in that moment when you're moving fast to stop, and it's just as easy to give a really good focused and intentional high five as it is to just throw your hand and flail and maybe miss. So I think about that with your employees, with your customers, with the people who are helping fund you, with the people who are helping provide those skill sets that you don't have, how quickly you can give them that high five, that, hey, thanks, I really appreciate that, whatever it is that they have brought to your idea. So, spoiler alert, that's the easy lesson, and that kind of goes along with Ben's, get moving, get the nervousness out of you. But the second lesson is live a sabbatical in your everyday life. My friend Sarah kind of interprets this more, do the cool stuff first and do it now. Don't put off the cool stuff and think oh, I had dinner the other night with a guy and he's like, yeah, in 12 years we're going to retire and live where we really want to. And you're like, why 12 years? So think about a sabbatical. Most of us are around universities or, LBCon's part of the university. A sabbatical is sort of that protected amount of time where you can learn a new skill, do research, take time off, travel, do cool things. And I kind of challenge you to think about how do you make that part of your day? And I've been thinking about this for about 2 years, live in a sabbatical in your everyday life. And I think for me, I think about it if, the old saying, if you didn't have to work, what would you do? Or if you're an entrepreneur, what are the things that you are super passionate about, and while your business starts to grow, what are the things you don't love to do? And how do you find people to help you continue to think of, this is a sabbatical, I'm doing exactly what I want to be, I'm learning what I want. I don't want to be learning this, and I can probably find somebody who's really good at that to kind of complement me. So getting back to my friend Sarah, there's something I haven't shared yet. Sarah, when I met her, she was about 30 years old, and she was, at that point, a survivor of brain cancer. And she got, when she was diagnosed with brain cancer, her response was, I'm going to start running marathons. Not, I'm going to start running, but I'm going to start running marathons. And so she ran marathons. She ran Big Sur, Marine Corps, Oklahoma City, and she was then diagnosed again 5 years into her recovery with brain cancer, and her response was, I'm going to keep running, and no matter what, I'm just going to, this is the cool stuff. I got all this other stuff going on, but the cool stuff is the running. And so she kind of built her life out of running with our friends, and so my do the cool stuff first. She was in the middle of doing chemo, and we ran a 15K in Golden Gate Park, which I know not all entrepreneurs love math. So 9.3 miles, and ran the whole thing. It was like Thursday chemo, Sunday 9.3 miles. And of course, we jogged it at our own pace, but you still got it. It was, this is my cool stuff, and I'm not going to let bad circumstances stop me from doing the thing that I love. And so when I got laid off, remember the fabulous day of walking in and losing the job, I didn't think I had a big choice to make. I really thought, I'm done. Like I'd been through many reorgs, and finally I thought, this is it. I'm going to take some time off. I'd done an MBA through the University of Wyoming remotely while working, and I was just kind of tired. And so what surprised me, though, was that I started asking myself, truly, what is my cool stuff? Like, what's the stuff I really want to be doing in my life? And I realized it wasn't necessarily leaving the job at the moment, but it was doing different stuff. And so I started to raise my hand and say, hey, you know what? It looks like I see a need in this organization as you go through the transition. How about I help you out for a while? Because I would like to stay in San Francisco a little while longer, keep running with Sarah, kind of keep doing some nonprofit work I'm doing, and this would help you as well. And so I ended up extending my time with this organization that was literally laying off all of us. I was like, but I want to go learn new things. And so I don't know if any of you have done StrengthsFinder, but kind of as I was mentioning earlier, I'm futuristic, I'm maximizer, and I'm strategic. So global reorganizations were like, I want to be part of this. And so I became really present about landing my high fives, being really in the moment, because it was all new stuff I'd never done before, and it was really scary. But as Ben said, sometimes you just have to go with that fear. And so I want you now to, and then I did actually take 6 months off. I mean, I did lose my job. And then I got to do the really cool stuff. So I said, I'm taking 6 months off, and I skied in Jackson Hole for 6 weeks. Then I went to Costa Rica and took what I call the beginner surf camp, where on day 8 I got up by myself. And then I spent last summer in Missoula. And I think coming back to Missoula, where I have so many roots and just so much appreciation for this community, was my cool stuff. So I'm like, I was able to prioritize it and go for it. So now I want you to take out your card. So we'll bring the lights up just a little bit. And you've got a thing that says sabbatical. So I'm going to give you, because we're kind of on a time crunch, I'm going to give you a minute to write down 3 things that you want to, your cool stuff. And whether it's whatever you're doing at work that you love and you want to keep doing that, that's your cool stuff. Whether it's having lunch with your kids at school every day, or traveling to Spain and learning Spanish, write down 3 things that are your cool thing. And it's not a test. You won't be graded. And I apologize for giving you a very big assignment and only 1 minute to do it. So this can be a jumping off point for you. So now we've talked about, you go through your life quickly, but how do you give those high fives? And then as you think about being an entrepreneur, how do you love to do the stuff that you want and continue to do more of that, and then find others to help you? I think Courtney said it nicely, where you start asking questions and you get those strategic partners that you're not great at, but they are. Like, how do you take that passion that they have and bring it to you so you get to continue to do the thing you're really good at? And so now the third lesson, shoot the moon. And I realized as I was writing the speech and talking with Christy about it that not everyone here would have grown up playing cards with my grandpa, so you may not know what shoot the moon means. We grew up playing a game called Pitch, which I think is a lot like Hearts. And when you got to a point in the game where you were likely gonna lose unless you took all the points for the next hand, you'd say, I'm gonna shoot the moon. You either get everything or you lose everything. And so sometimes you have to shoot the moon. Like if you want to run a marathon, you don't sign up for the 5K. You're like, I'm going to go do the marathon. You might not make it, but you aim for what you want. There are risks where you might fail. And I like to think about this as telling the universe, this is what I want. You don't start with, well, this is what I'll settle for. What do you want? And then you kind of do your negotiations down the road. But I did want to clarify, this does not mean go home and take your kids' college fund and drive to Vegas and put it all in Black 17. That is just gambling. And so when you think about it, it's sort of when your hard work meets your opportunity, and it's that launching off point, it's that diving board that Ben was talking about, where you're like, okay, I'm ready to jump, I've prepared, and I can go forward and I can do this now. And so, kind of to finalize my story about Sarah, who is one of the dearest people in my life. In 2016, she decided to run the Oklahoma City Marathon. It's her hometown marathon. It was going to be her last marathon, and she got her sister to run it. Her sister, who would never run a marathon, she's like, you should run this marathon. Which, I mean, if I run past 5 miles on a day, to me, that is a marathon. So to get somebody who's not a runner to run a marathon with you, I thought was a pretty big leap of faith and a pretty big ask for somebody. And so Sarah shows up in Oklahoma, and she and her sister take off running the marathon, and Sarah made it 11 miles and then turned into the cheerleader for her sister. And so this was her shoot the moon. Sarah beat a lot of odds. She did not beat the ultimate odd. She passed away about 4 months later. But she didn't think to herself, maybe I shouldn't run a marathon. She's like, I'm going to shoot the moon. I'm going for the marathon. I'm going to have my sister run the marathon, and we're going to see where it takes us. And so she prepared for it. She was ready for it. And there were a lot of things that she celebrated as a result of that. And I think I tried to take this shoot the moon moment when I lost my job. Sarah and I we worked in the same building, so we ran a lot and we talked a lot about, I lost my job, what am I going to do? And my shoot the moon moment was sort of, when you go to work every day and you've already lost your job, you can just start asking for things. You're like, why don't I go work on this project? Or I think I could really help out here. And as a result of that, I got to do some pretty amazing things, and I actually got to completely shift my career. And so a couple of the cool things I got to do, they needed somebody to fly to Japan and train the team over there on business forecasting. And I'm like, I actually taught for 2 years at the University of Montana when I was there, and I took a semester of Japanese in college at the University of Montana. It was like all these Montana things kept coming up, and I was like, I'm actually prepared a little bit for that, or I know what to expect. So I did that, and I got to work on these projects, and I even got to have really cool conversations about my strengths and what I wanted to be doing, and I was really, really starting to be honest with myself. And I felt like I was starting to happen to my job. Instead of this job kind of coming at me every day, I was like, how do I want to navigate through this? And when you're at a big corporation, it can, from the outside, seem really big, but usually you're still working with 10 people that get to know you. And so I just started telling them, I think that the company would have more benefit from me if I was doing change management. What options are there for me? So we kind of talked through some options and sort of set some things out before I took my 6 months off. So I actually got to take this beautiful sabbatical of time where I didn't have to be too worried about what was next. But I, again, had worked 10 years and really a lot of hard work going into really setting yourself up for those opportunities. But when I think about my craziest kind of shoot the moon moment, and I didn't think this was so crazy until I was talking to a friend and she's like, "You did what?" So I'd started looking for a house in Missoula like the year before I lost my job. And then when I lost my job, I thought, maybe it's not the right time. And I sat with it for a couple of days, and then I realized, no, I need to buy a house in Missoula. I will do whatever it takes to make this happen if I find the right house. And so I found a house, like I borrowed from my 401k, I did things that, maybe my dad didn't think was the right thing to do, but it was my shoot the moon. It was something that I had thought about. That was going on 2 years of really being focused on saving money, on looking at places. And so, where most people say, be very frugal, don't take that kind of risk, I was like, I prepared for this. I'm going to just shoot the moon, I'm going to go for it. And I will say, I love every single minute I'm in my house here. It is the best decision that I've made. And so now you get to do another activity, and it's shoot the moon. So you have the moon on your card. So you had 3 little activities or 3 ideas, or maybe you've been thinking about things while I've been talking up here. But is there an opportunity to take one of those 3 and make them a shoot the moon kind of thing? And what I mean by that is if you said, oh, I'd like to learn Spanish, which I say this constantly, and I learned for about 2 weeks, and then obviously it's not my priority, it's not my cool thing, I haven't put enough energy into it. But if your cool thing is I want to learn Spanish, your shoot the moon might be, I want to go live in Spain for a year, or I want to go live in Central America and be a whitewater rafting guide and really work on my Spanish. So take about 30 seconds. Again, you can take these home with you. There won't be any tests, so this is an ongoing, getting you thinking kind of activity. All right. And so, like I say, keep working on it when we're done. But when I look back on the last couple of years and really try to embrace this, does every day work out with lots of high fives and lots of shooting the moons? Of course not. But at least that's what I try to think about as I go in. Who am I going to be thankful for today? What crazy risk, do we need to be taking to get where we need to go? And so when I think about the shoot the moon, a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you're ready and you're on that ledge. And only you can know, is this the time to be all in, that you're going to get all the tricks and you're going to win the game? Maybe you win hugely, you're hugely successful, or maybe you fall a little bit short, but then, the no's aren't necessarily the period. It's continuing to go with that. And so my life feels pretty far away from 2 years ago when I was losing my job and selling skinny jeans to babies. It was a pretty fun job, I have to say. But now that I lead a change and engagement team, I work with people everybody I work with is going through change. So 24/7, no one calls and says, hey, everything's status quo and we love it. Everybody's like, oh my God, we're changing again, or this didn't quite work. So I try to help people realize, a lot of what you do is optional, and if we've had these talks in some of our breakouts, and if this isn't a comfortable place for you, I like to also help people figure out where is your comfort place. And again, playing to your strengths. And so you have one more final activity, and I know we're over time, but to switch cards with somebody else in the audience. If you would like, just turn it over, because I don't think we have time to share out right now, but during our breakout session. And the other person writes something on the back of yours like, way to go, good job, you've got support from LBCon. Write one little quick blurb on somebody else's card. And if you didn't have a chance now, we'll have our breakout session. Come by, I'll write something on it. And so just imagine your day with trying to take these lessons, and if there are any ways to incorporate some of these things or in your entrepreneurial endeavors. And I want you to just end today by high-fiving and thanking your neighbor for coming. Thanks.
High fives, love it. Living our sabbatical in everyday life. It's a good lesson. Our next presenter is both a presenter and performer. He's been dancing in Florida since he was 12 and probably before that, and he's been in Montana for the last 3 years. Now he's taking a new step in Montana to teach hip-hop and connect kids across the world. He is the owner of I Am Special Effects LLC. Please welcome Special Effects.
How we doing? Good. All right, well, I want to start this off with a video, part of a documentary that I had the opportunity to go out and start on a project connecting people through dance, and my first location was Uganda, Naka Valley Refugee Settlement. So I'll let the video play. It has a little bit of dialogue in it, and be right back.
Dance is a way of bringing people together, no matter your color, nationality, your language. It doesn't matter. It's one of our universal languages. I came to Uganda to spread this, to break these barriers with the dance routine that I hope to spread around the world.
Nous avons apprendre quelque chose qui sont très spécial pour nous. En tout cas, on est mille merci.
My name is Quentin Robinson, and I go by the dance name of Special Effects. I'm from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. FLA, baby, stand up. And I've been dancing for 17 years of my life now, counting. It's one of our universal languages. It has always been something that ties us in together. It's in our DNA.
Well, we're at the halfway point of Naka Valley right now, north and south of the equator. Yeah. Being in Uganda for the first time, let alone Africa, was simply amazing. Just conserving my inner crazy right now, energy, everything, you know. So, yeah, just giving it some time before I get dripping already. Start dancing. It was surreal. Hey everyone, we're headed to Naka Valley to start these workshops and some choreo with the guys on the camp, and looking for a good time. So we're looking to have a good time. So we'll get you all out there.
Back on the road again, another hour from where we were staying. We followed a long, bumpy road all the way to Naka Valley Settlement. The red dust encircling our car, never seeming to settle. You could taste it. Naka Valley is home to around 120,000 refugees. It is the largest refugee settlement in Uganda, the 8th largest in the world. Many have come from the Congo, Somalia, and Burundi, fleeing conflict and escaping death. In many cases, their sisters, brothers, parents, or even children wasn't so lucky. Now, here they wait to go home, to be resettled, simply to survive. The average refugee spends 20 years of their life in a camp. These were the people I was about to meet.
We're going to do a workshop. We're going to do a routine that's going to be taught around the world. And this is the first location that we're traveling to get this going. So I hope you're all ready to have some fun. We're getting ready to start this up and join in.
You never feel happy. Never feel happy. No, you won't. Until you try. You never feel happy. You never feel happy until you song.
Every one of them. Appreciate what they're doing here. They don't have the same outlet that we have with music and videos and YouTube. These guys are raw talent.
This isn't the last time we're going to connect. Those dancers are forever going to be a part of what I do. There's not many words to describe that feeling. It's just simply amazing. After going through what they've gone through, after witnessing what they've witnessed in their lifetime, after being in a refugee settlement, they're out in the field, dancing with me.
And I'm feeling good. Fish in the sea, you know how I feel. River running free, you know how I feel. Blossom on the tree, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I'm feeling good.
Un anglais dit comme ça, never give up. Never give up.
Dragonfly out in the sun, you know what I mean, don't you know? Butterflies all having fun, you know what I mean. Sleep in peace when day is done, that's what I mean. And this old world is a new world and a bold world for me. Yeah, yeah. Stars, when you shine, you know how I feel.
Hello again. Well, real quick, don't want to talk too long because I have some couple surprises for you all also. But this was done within a 3 to 4 week process of planning to go over on notice. I had a 7D camera. That's it. 7D camera, and I met up with the company ARC, and we ended up linking up with Emily Einberg. She's a consultant, and we both ran around with 2 cameras to shoot everything in this film and edit it within like a week just about, just to get the ball rolling. This was part 1 to many. Basically, it's an organic documentary. We're going to multiple locations and doing a live web feed with students in schools, in businesses, in just everywhere. We're doing a live web feed so people can interact and talk and dance with each other in a huge classroom setting with projectors and the entire use of what I think social media and live web feeds should be for. So with that, I just want to let everyone know to embrace movement. Embrace movement in every single way. We all do it. We all dance, rather it's a 2-step after you get some dance juice in you at the bar, the bedroom dance that can never see the light of day in the shower, wherever it may be. We all do that type of dance, right? So with that being said, I want everyone to get into the character with me before I start, all right? So to someone that you haven't come here with, that you didn't come here with today, look to them and tell them your dance name. If you had one, what would that dance name be, right? Just make one up. I don't care what it is, but let that person know your dance name. Go for it. Let me hear 3. Let me hear 3 dance names that you all came up with. Funky Monkey? Amazing. Mr. Who? Mr. Zesty, Funky Monkey, and Red Winger. This sounds like a funk band from like the 60s and 70s. That's amazing. All right, so that's perfect. I love it. I might make sure you copyright those names too. Like keep those names, all right? So with that, I have one favor from everyone, all right? Can we all stand up? And can we all move in? Because I'm a street dancer. I grew up street dancing in a basement with white gloves, a full windbreaker suit, meeting up at the skating ring to battle people. That's the way I grew up, all right? Street cred, right? So can everyone just come forward, like right in this area, all right? Come on up, come on up. Because I want to make this a more of an intimate thing, because everyone sitting in the chairs is like, I feel like I'm on stage. I don't like it, right? So with that, I want everyone to do something with me. I'm going to do maybe an 8 count, but I want you all just to do it, all right? Just try your hardest, or don't try at all, but just do it, all right? So here's the 8 count, all right?
Death of me, at least we'll both be numb. And you'll always get the best of me, the worst is yet to come. But at least we'll both be beautiful and stay forever young. This I know, yeah, this I know. She told me to worry about it. She told me to worry no more. We both knew we can't go without it. She told me
Oh man, that is he's mesmerizing, isn't he? Give it up for Quinn one more time. Gotta